McLaren has swooped for yet another key Red Bull figure, with Max Verstappen's race engineer Gianpiero Lambiase joining in a senior trackside role, but it's not yet defined exactly what that will be. John Noble, what do we know about such a big move and why exactly it's playing out?
This is a fascinating development in the paddock. It has ramifications, obviously, both for Red Bull and for McLaren. Obviously, on the Red Bull side, it's the loss of a huge stalwart, someone who's been instrumental in championship successes, has been instrumental in Max Verstappen's career. So losing someone of that experience, that magnitude, that influence, and someone so close to Max as well, is going to have consequences that I'm sure we can talk about. And from McLaren's perspective, it's a huge coup. We learned over the winter that other teams were sniffing around, that Lambiase was considering his future. Aston Martin targeted him as potential team principal. There were rumours Williams were interested in it. But behind the scenes, McLaren got the talks rolling, got a deal across the line, and have brought him in a support role for Stella. It's not going to be an engineering position like he has at Red Bull. This is a senior position, helping out running the racing team on race weekends, a right-hand man to Stella, and maybe even potentially longer term, could he be McLaren's team principal of the future?
Yeah, and we're going to get more into what GP is going to bring to McLaren, how that might work, the knock-on effects and so on in a little bit. But first, we do need to get into Red Bull, yet another departure for them to deal with, yet another core member of Verstappen's team leaving that he has to deal with too. The erosion of the people around Max over the last, let's say, 12 months or so has been quite significant, which obviously fits into a wider narrative about Red Bull losing key personnel. We could spend the next 5 minutes probably listing all of the people that have departed since Dietrich Mateschitz, the co-founder of Red Bull's passing at the end of 2022. But focusing on Max specifically, John, is this the biggest loss that Max will have of all of the people from his team that have gone in recent times?
I think it's up there. I think losing Helmut Marko, for example, someone who'd been there for quite a while and he'd been so close to, and his whole career had been with Helmut. I think that was an important moment for him. But I think this is a big line in the sand, because this is his closest ally in Red Bull, someone he has won all his races with, someone he's won all his titles with, someone he's been very close to. They've shared the highs and the lows. It's a friendship rather than just a pure working relationship. And I think losing someone of Gianpiero's kind of ties to him is something that is going to influence what happens in the future. It's an end of an era at Red Bull. And I think if Red Bull had any hope of keeping hold of Max Verstappen longer term and committing him and keeping those hopes were best served with staff stability, keeping the close people there. So when you know that someone like this is leaving, that's another reason for Max to think, well, maybe now is the right time to step away.
Yeah, it is tricky because there's obviously, there will be a personal element to this. There always is when someone wants to leave a team. It's not just about solely professional goals or anything like that. We know that Lambiase had serious personal matters to deal with last year. He missed races. It got very emotional with Verstappen by the end of the season, and that should be respected. What it doesn't change is the fact that it moves someone out of Verstappen's core team, and it does fit into that wider Red Bull narrative. So Max might well understand, I'm sure he does, because as you say, it's a friendship there. It's a marriage, isn't it? That's what it was always described as with how much they bicker. He will understand why this move is happening, but that doesn't mean that he has to like it, and it will still have an impact on what he's deciding, because he has this dissatisfaction with the rules at the moment. We know he's weighing up his future. A sabbatical at the very least is on the cards for 2027, and he has always said it's enjoyment first and then competitiveness second. But someone like his race engineer, his number one, his confidant, the only person in Red Bull and the entire F1 paddock who can say no to Max, who can push back, who can give as good as he gets, him leaving impacts enjoyment and chances of success. So it can't fail to have an impact on the decision that Max makes, even if it's subconscious, a small factor, a big factor. But it's also a massive impact on Red Bull too, because it's a further crumbling of the empire, isn't it? And the foundations that made this team as successful as it's been.
Yeah, this is a completely different era, Red Bull now. Ever since Christian Horner left after the British Grand Prix last year, we've just seen more and more staff stepping away. you get a kind of a churn of personnel anyway as contracts come to an end and people make decisions. We've got new teams on the grid. Obviously, Audi was successful in luring Jonathan Wheatley. We've seen staff moving around the paddock into Cadillac, and there's endless shuffling around. So there's always a natural turnover, but it seems to have accelerated at Red Bull. And I think the end of the Christian Horner era, the change of tone at the top of the team, increased influence from Red Bull Austria, shifted it away from that lean, mean racing machine it was under Christian Horner, made it not quite a manufacturer team, even though it is a manufacturer now itself, but more corporate, a different structure. And this is often the moment when people decide, maybe it is time for me to step away. And when people are unsettled, F1 is a very competitive place, and the offers come in and people get poached and chased and approached. And that's what's happened in this case.
Well, I think there's been two phases really of this decline from the Red Bull side off track, and the sort of sinking of the ship over many years, very slow sinking in literal terms. But after Mateschitz died, there was always a risk that the factions within Red Bull would start warring, and you would have an impact. It would be hard to keep it together in the same way. When Horner was there was still alienation of certain people. So obviously, eventually Adrian Newey left, but Rob Marshall left. He's at McLaren now as well. Horner was still there when Jonathan Wheatley wanted to leave the team, and Horner was also still battling to keep Will Courtney, the strategy chief, who is also going to McLaren. Sense a pattern here. So it's a pre-Horner issue, and then basically new Red Bull hasn't stopped the rot, and I think that will be the biggest concern for the people in charge, and namely Laurent Mekies, obviously Horner's successor.
Do you remember 2007? That's the year F1's youngest driver Arvid Lindblad was born, Fernando Alonso started chasing his third F1 title, rookie Lewis Hamilton burst onto the scene, and Kimi Raikkonen emerged champion in a thrilling finale. And if you took out a car finance agreement in the last 20 years, then you might be interested to know we've partnered with Refund Club, who are helping thousands of people get their money back for missold car finance agreements, with the FCA expecting over $8.2 billion to be paid out to drivers in the UK. Simply enter a few details, then Refund Club takes care of the technical work, background checks, and agreement research behind the scenes. If your claim looks like it could be valid, their specialist law firm handles everything. See if you're owed a refund on any car finance agreements with a free 60-second check by scanning the QR code on screen or simply clicking the link in the video description. It costs you nothing to check and could potentially lead to thousands of pounds for just a minute of your time.
Well, I mentioned obviously that there are several senior Red Bull personnel, past and present in GP's case, going to McLaren or having gone to McLaren. So, John, what's the strategy here if you're Zach Brown? Are you trying to recreate Red Bull Mark II? And as you said, F1's a ruthless place, so you're sensing weakness. So you just go to the team that's hemorrhaging senior talent and pick their best people up?
I don't think it's recreating Red Bull and trying to make Red Bull V2, but it definitely is trying to create a racing team that is lean, mean racing machine that Red Bull was. As McLaren's moved forward, it's shaken off the competitive struggles of recent years. It's won world championships. It's pushing forward. It needs to adapt. It needs to be competitive. It needs to remain on the front foot. The challenge of being at the top is one thing. It's a bigger challenge sticking there. You need the best personnel on board. And when a team is competitive, it can attract the top staff. It can dictate what it wants. It can evolve the structure, how it thinks it best fits its purposes going forwards. And the Red Bull operation worked well. It was brilliant. It was kept under control by Horner, had the right racing brains, pushing in the right direction, absolutely focused on the racing and making a competitive racing team. And that's what's happening under Zach. It's what's happening under Andrea Stella. And this is another bit in the factory to push things forward. Alongside Rob Marshall, alongside Will Courtney, you've now got GP coming in, and these are solid racing brains, very experienced, very talented, top of their game, and exactly what McLaren needs.
It's interesting to think how it fits in and what the long-term play is, though, because when McLaren have changed things, recruited people, reshuffled people since Stella took charge as team principal, there's always been, I would say, a glaring weakness that needed to be fixed. That they were not performing well as a technical organisation. He rejigged the technical department. They brought in Rob Marshall, initially in a different position. after a couple of months there, Stella noticed that wasn't getting the best out of him. They made him chief designer, and he flourished in that role. Execution-wise, strategy-wise, operations-wise, I don't think it's been the sharpest team. It's probably still the lingering main weakness for McLaren, even at the end of last year when it was winning both world championships. But you're bringing in a strategy head in Courtney as well. So all of those things are kind of like, it's not that there's low-hanging fruit because it's still a very, very high-performing organisation, but they serve a specific job. GP is someone who should elevate things because of who he is, the respect he'll command, the expertise he has. But I don't see him filling a glaring gap, which probably leads to the obvious question, John, and it has been speculated at least in one place by now. Is he going there to ultimately be Stella's replacement if Andrea needs to move on?
Well, there's the question is when the replacement comes. I think longer term you can see GP evolving into a future team principal. We've seen engineers do it all over the place. Andrea Stella himself, engineer to team principal. Alan Permain, for example, engineer to team principal. Laura Meckes, engineer to team principal. So it's a natural progression as a career. But I think there's two parallels here. One is a potential long-term successor. The other is this a predefined move to bring GP in to come in and replace Andrea Stella amid the rumours that he's going to Ferrari. I think that's a bit premature. I think Andrea Stella, he is Italian. It would be a dream reunion to get a Ferrari and win championships there. But he's moulded a team at McLaren in his mind. It works exactly the way he wants it to do. It's been successful. He's got an atmosphere around him, a political atmosphere, a boss in Zach Brown, a board fully behind him. Doesn't have the baggage that would come with a job at Ferrari. So it doesn't make much sense to think that Andrea would throw everything away now to take the risk of jumping into the political hotbed that can be Ferrari at times. So I think while longer term, yes, GP could become a future McLaren team principal. He's got the talent, the experience, the ability, the personality to do it. I don't think this is the preordained plan as of now, that this is happening in the short term.